I am Johnny Massacre, and this is my review of the classic Resident Evil 1 video game on the PlayStation 1. This is a survival horror game, and it came out in 1996, developed by Capcom. The story of this game is you're part of a special forces group, and you go to investigate some murders in the middle of nowhere. You're dropped off by a helicopter, and you are immediately set upon by a pack of freakish mutant wild dogs. In a bid to escape, you run into a big mansion for shelter. In the beginning it seems empty, there's nothing really there, but soon you come to realize that something is not quite right here, and there's some kind of conspiracy. The house is actually festering with horrible zombies who all want to kill you, and not only that, but other monsters as well, like weird sharks, these things called hunters, which look like giant Pepe the Frog mutants, and a few bosses as well. And as you try to escape, you also can't help but unravel the mystery of this mansion and try to work out the conspiracy to create an army of zombies as bioweapons. The story is told through ridiculously bad voice acting, which has some kind of charm to it, which I quite like, and very bad full motion video cut scenes with B-movie actors trying to tell the story, which is just terrible. But the actual story of the game itself is really told via the various journals you find dotted about through the game that detail what's going on in the mansion. And it's kind of compelling, and it's kind of decent, the story. The government is doing bad things, and you're kind of finding them out, which is an age-old story, and it's a fun one. The graphics of this game are terrible and haven't aged very well. The environments are pre-rendered, meaning a more powerful workstation, relatively speaking at the time, created the graphics for the environments, and then the PlayStation, I believe, just took a picture of it, and then it puts polygonal 3D characters on top of them. It should, in theory, free up processing power and therefore make the 3D character models even better, but for some reason they don't look good in this game. They're very pixely, but they were designed for those old school televisions and not high definition televisions of today. So if you play the game today on an emulator, you really can see all of its flaws in ways that the people who originally played it never could. The gameplay, it's just a point and click adventure, but with guns. Although most of the gameplay is about being resourceful, you have limited ammunition, and therefore you have to carefully plot and plan your way through the game so you don't run out of resources. There's a good risk versus reward dynamic, therefore, where in order to conserve ammo, you'll try to dodge past the lumbering zombies, albeit in very, very narrow corridors. And so you could save life and keep valuable ammunition to pump into those bosses later in the game, or you could try to shoot some of the zombies earlier to progress, but risk running out of ammo. The way you play through this game is dictated by limited saves. You can only save when you find these objects called ink ribbons, which you use in a typewriter, and therefore you don't save a lot. And what usually happens is you just die a lot, progressing into all the rooms to work out where all the keys and resources are. When you know where they are, you go back to your original save, then you go to the rooms in the right order, get all the resources, progress through the game, and then you save it. All of the gameplay is framed by two things. One, your limited inventory, and two, this big item chest. There are item chests dotted about throughout the game, which almost serve as checkpoints, as they're usually next to typewriters where you can save your game. Any items you put in the chest can be retrieved from any of the other identical chests throughout the game. A weird teleporty chest. It doesn't make any sense. And so you've only got 6 item slots. Usually, in the first half of the game at least, they'll be taken up by a weapon, 1, ammunition, 2, knife, 3, health kit or a herb or health spray, as they're known in this game, 4, a key, which you absolutely need, 5, leaving you only 1 item slot. That means you cannot hoard items. When you work out where all the medikits are, and believe me, you'll need them, and all the ammunition, once you've kind of cleared out an area, so to speak, it means that you have to go back to the magic teleporty chest, store all your items in there, including your health kits and your guns and ammunition, making it risky to go and get the health kits, which are now left waiting for you. Pick up 5 or 6 of these health kits or herbs, go all the way back to the chest, drop them off, go back to get the rest of the herbs and ammunition, go all the way back to the chest and drop them off. This game, when you don't know what's ahead of you, because you've already used up most of your item slots, you keep ending up having to go back to this goddamn chest to get your items. So by reducing your inventory space and by putting this teleporty chest in the game, Capcom simply added hours and hours and hours of time onto the game. Whether that's gameplay or not, whether that qualifies as gameplay, I don't know. But a lot of this game is just going back and forth. I don't think you could get away with this kind of game today. But back then, because the graphics were kind of novel and because the whole experience was novel, I think people put up with it. But today they wouldn't. That said, you're up against it in this game. There's limited resources, and that adds to the sense of dread, terror, and hopelessness, although it can be frustrating. And that is tempered by the fact that towards the end of the game, if you hoarded your items well, it kind of feels like the tables slowly start to turn. You become more powerful, you grow and transform as a character, and it's time to kick some ass. And that is rewarding, and you feel a great sense of achievement. The sound in this game is unbelievable. It is one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. You owe it to yourself to experience it. The brooding MIDI strings of the first half of the game, the creepy bell-like tones from a kind of house of horror, dollhouse type thing later in the game are really, really good. And sometimes there's no music at all. All you can hear is your footsteps echoing throughout the mansion. At the time, this was a big thing. The sound of your footsteps changed depending on what kind of surface you were running on. So if you were running on wood, the sound would be different as opposed to running on a metal grate, for example. And other times you just hear the crickets outside, or you hear the wolves kind of howling in the night. And so those parts really add a dynamism to the sonic experience of Resident Evil, and it just sounds amazing. There's quite a few different kinds of enemies for the time. There's a few bosses and stuff. Generally, this game is a vibe. It's a vibe. It's not really about the shooting, although that can be satisfying in some points. It's about the vibe. It's zombies, it's horror, the mansion is really creepy, it's really well designed, it's a beautiful old mansion from another era, a little bit reminiscent of the hotel in The Shining, with loads of ornate stuff and good classic old designs and sculptures and statues and stuff like that. And it's just a vibe. It influenced so many other games, it sold so many copies, it influenced House of the Dead, it influenced PT, Playable Teaser, probably the scariest game of all time, directed by Guillermo del Toro and Hideo Kojima, with its narrow corridors and drab wallpaper. And I think if you want to understand gaming in the modern era, you have to go back to blueprint games like this. There's nothing quite like it. It can be frustrating, but it is satisfying, and it's just a wicked vibe. Overall, I give Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation 1 8 out of 10 in and of itself, but taken within the context of gaming as a greater whole, and what with this game's influence, and what with how many copies it sold, and how important it was in selling the original PlayStation, I'd have to give it a 9. Make sure you tune in for our next review. We will be playing Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PlayStation 1 this Saturday, a 24-hour live stream, attempting to complete the game within 24 hours. We did complete Resident Evil 1 within 24 hours, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 46 seconds specifically. What an amazing coincidence. Can we finish Metal Gear Solid within 24 hours? Tune in on Saturday to find out, following which will be my review. Take care and see you next time.